Mike, here he is. Mike from around the world. How are you tonight?
Pastor Paul Begley, doing well, doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, Mike, doing great. So glad you're with us. And well, first of all, I just want to say there's a lot breaking. One thing I just want to say is a article just came out, Popular Mechanics, 12 hours ago, saying there's 2 clusters of asteroids on either side of Jupiter coming in this direction, and that NASA is launching a rocket ship in October of 2021 to investigate them. Now, they're not saying that it's a danger to Earth or anything. They're saying they want to go and learn about the origins of the universe, and they've called these asteroids the Trojan asteroids. It's kind of funny that they bring this out the night you're coming on. But before we go there, Mike, we really got to talk about Beirut, Lebanon, and not just Beirut, Lebanon, but explosions in China, India, United Arab Emirates, North Korea, Iran, maybe other places. Is this a coincidence, or is this what you said last Thursday at the end of the program when you said, oh, by the way, next week we'll probably be talking about a terror attack? Mike?
Well, I think that it's past coincidence when you have this many explosions, not to mention the operations that were taking place in Iran. These explosions are very strategic, it would seem. Vulnerabilities are what they're targeting. Now, who's doing it? That's the big question, because you don't ignite ammonium nitrates, just out of the blue. But there's a problem. You have all these countries in the Middle East, right? You have Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Jordan. All these individuals. Egypt, keep your eyeballs on those guys. But you have operatives and people infiltrated inside of just about every Middle Eastern entity. Every single one, from Yemen all the way up to Turkey, even in Greece. So you have infiltration problems, and what these guys are doing is they are, at first, some of the operations that took place in Iran, of course, were probing, but there's some internal operations within operations that are taking place, and believe me when I tell you, they're just now beginning. It's going to cost, if you think 5,000 is injured and a couple hundred killed is a number, they're sending this is a clear indication that they know where the vulnerabilities are, because Israel is not responsible for this one. But Israel is also infiltrated, unfortunately. So we have, there are major problems in the Middle East. Now, what does this mean? This means that sooner than later, somebody's going to have launch capabilities. And you can't tell who's going to have those launch capabilities. Right now, it would seem like everybody's in control of their arsenals. That's not the truth, because just about every single military entity in the Middle East is infiltrated. And you have high-level operatives who will not hesitate to take control and to kickstart this brand new caliphate. They went through 6 in the Middle East. They are pressed, determined, and they will not back down from starting.
All right, let me ask you, Mike, let me ask a question. So, and you just said the word brand new caliphate. I've got a feeling on that, but I'll ask you in a minute. But let's just say this. So you're saying, you do realize that the President of the United States said he met with his top generals and came out and said this was some kind of an attack. But the whole world, Mike, the whole world, every news agency is reporting this as an accident. And they're scrubbing the internet of anything and anyone that says otherwise, including, I've even seen a video that looked like a missile going in, but after I watched it about 12 times, I did some research, I found out it was a fake video, and the guy who even put it out said he faked it. But I don't know if a drone was used to throw a missile in there or maybe some other type of detonation device. But you do realize you're confirming this was a terrorist attack in Beirut, Lebanon.
Well, Pastor Paul, you have a lot of unknown players right now. It is an open port. It's not a very secure port. Anybody can get to that province, right? So think about it. You're looking at something that is not secured, something that any player can get inside of. And all they have to do is have intelligence or knowledge of where that those nitrates were stored, and then go and sabotage. They don't care how many people die. They don't care who dies or who's hurt. They don't care. What they care about is this is an ideology that is, this one will not go away. ISIS does not compare to this, although I guess you could say that some of the portions of this are just like ISIS, but we're facing a very determined entity that will prosper as it steps forward, unfortunately.
Is Turkey, Mike, considered as part of a brand new caliphate? Just, I don't know.
You could say that, but I have a suspicion, Pastor Paul, and you can mark this. Okay, mark this. Let me give you somewhat of a foresight or a prediction in something.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
There will be a declaration of an individual who wants to lead this brand new caliphate, right? But it'll be somewhat passive. In the meanwhile, there's going to be another individual of whom the people will point out and say, this individual is the one. And they will try to chase this individual, right? In other words, they're going to try and grab this individual, but he doesn't want anything to do with it. That's going to be the real one. You'll see that covered in the media about someone rejecting his placement as far as this new caliphate is concerned, which will infuriate Turkey, is going to infuriate Iran, and it's going to lead a big problem right to Saudi Arabia. So you're looking at someone who really wants it, right? Turkey, who really wants it. But there's another player of whom the people will try to say, this is our guy, and he will say, no, I'm not. And he's going to try and get away from, when you see that guy say, no, I'm not, when you hear about people trying to point out somebody as being the leader, that's the one. So that is the one.
So he's going to probably he's going to be ushered in. And he doesn't look like he's going to be a part of the Shiite movement, but instead he's going to come in softly, maybe from the Sunni side. Is that correct?
He'll want nothing to do with it, Pastor Paul. You'll have an easy, you'll identify this individual easy, but he's going to want nothing to do with it. This guy will seem like he doesn't want anything to do with any type of confusion or internal fights. Remember that, internal fights, because this brand new caliphate will be the product of an internal fight. This one identified, the people will go and try and get. When you hear about this guy, you better believe it has begun. There'll be no, this is 1,000%. It will have begun, and the events of the world will follow in suit, and
Mike, and I know the Bible prophecies, and I also know that there's an Antichrist coming according to the Bible prophecies, and you know that, and there's a Mahdi, a type of redeemer on the Islamic side that's going to arrive, who has very similar qualifications as the Antichrist. You have just brought up a brand new caliphate has been formed. There's a guy who wants to be the caliphate, but he's not going to get to be, because the real one will be ushered in by another group. And my question is, have they already identified the one that wants to be and the one who will be? As they're already intelligence-wise, have you, or should I say, has the government of the United States already identified this?
They have an idea of the one who wants to be, right?
Okay.
There is to actually get into the one who doesn't want to be the one that actually is. Pastor Paul, I'm telling you now, you have to know this. There are a lot of people out there who are Christians, right? They learn about spiritual things, although they have an issue believing in spiritual things. The government plans for spiritual things. They absolutely believe in it. They're making plans right now for spiritual things. So it seems the unbelievers who, government entities, they know about these spiritual things, and they have to constantly deal with them. It's very real to them. But you have a lot of Christians of whom it seems like a mythical thing. It is not mythical. And when you go to the Middle East, you're on a different planet in the Middle East. It is nothing like the feeling, the spiritual senses that you have over there are nothing like they are over here, especially stepping into anybody who's been to Israel. You know that when you step there, there's almost a check in your spirit, and it reminds you, be aware of where you're walking. Be aware of who you are before you step foot on this soil, right? It's a spiritual check that you get.
That's exactly right. You're exactly right. It's a spiritual, powerful anointing there. And also you can feel the other spirits moving around, okay? I mean, you know what I'm saying, Mike?
You do, especially when you get into Saudi Arabia. It's very, I'll say, spiritually deceitful place, because it can cause a person to feel very relaxed. And I'm telling you now, in the house of the Saudis, we get a big problem. I mean, a huge problem. So expect Iran Iran will be a player, I believe, a little later on, because they're not going to agree what's happening. The Middle East is going to reject the real one. But the real one, the people are going to nab that real one. It'll be a set of unfortunate events that the entire world will not miss on this one. And it's happening so quick, because, even in the best estimations, no one could have estimated that certain plans would have gone into play already. These explosions that everybody's saying is going somewhere. So, this is not something you discount. The world is beginning to wake up. They're beginning to see a very real state of affairs. And it's not pretty at all. It's going to get a lot worse, because that explosion.
Did a drone fire a missile into this ammonium nitrate warehouse?
Actually, because of the operatives, and this is very sticky waters, because this is a international incident right here. This is why all the countries said, no, it's not some sort of a hostile act. They have to say that, Pastor Paul, because they're not ready. Right. They have to say that. They know what it means. If that was a hostility from anybody, they know what it means. Believe me, the rubber band is stretched all the way out, and it's about to break. The individuals that are responsible for that explosion are unique. Let's put it that way. They're unique. They're also everywhere. They're also in Russia. There's a fear about Russia, because they also are embedded deeply in Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, all the way in Mongolia, China, India, Pakistan, you name all these places. And they've been tracked all the way from Niger, down below Nigeria in the Togo waters. It's a bad situation. We have so many movements, so many things going forward, but that explosion, you replicate that times maybe a couple thousand, and this is what we're looking at. So don't think that's the end of that. Yeah, a couple thousand explosions like that. In other words, severe sabotage that will ignite, sooner or later is going to ignite some aggression. And this is what they're looking for.
Are you serious?
This is what they're going to have.
Are you saying a bomb that would be about 2,000 times stronger than that? Or are you saying 2,000 explosions?
2,000 explosions.
Oh, my goodness.
2,000 explosions.
Mike. Oh. The world would be turned upside down at that point. But that does sound like what's going to happen in Isaiah chapter 24. And actually, even the vision of the preacher, A. Allen. So, okay, you're saying this thing is going to ignite. The world is going to ignite into chaos.
You can't track the players. The players are infiltrated. They've been there from think of a guy who joins the service with no rank. He rises up in servitude in the service with rank. but he's never loyal to the military he's in. I'm telling you that every military has an issue like this. Every military is coming up with plans to get rid of these infiltration individuals, but they're not going to do it. They've been activating all over the place. This explosion that people saw in Lebanon, we've been seeing them before Lebanon. We're going to see them after. We're going to see explosions all over the place. Pastor Paul's going to come a point in time where they're going to blame somebody else for it. Right? This next conflict will not be a legitimate conflict, meaning it's not going to be purposed, right? Somebody's just not going to start an offensive. It's going to be by some of these infiltrators, who, by the way, are the best trained. They're ghosts, or what they are. They call them ghosts because they kind of pop up and they disappear without a trace. They're ghosts, but they actually have a plan, and they're dovetailing from official plans that were initially utilized against Iran to exploit or to get them to react, but they're taking it to a brand new level. And so all these countries, right, through a sign of saying, nope, we want peace, are saying, no, we don't want a part of this, but it's too late. Right? This is why they're not going to say anything. Later on, it will come out that they suspect just what I just told you, but by then we'll have some more explosions by then.
Folks, this is Mike from Around the World, of course, with Council of Time. It's so good to have him on. You know, we've been interviewing Mike for over 7 or almost 8 years now, and so many of his so much of that information that he's been able to share with us has come to pass, and here we are again. I think you've did a great job, Mike, answering these questions about whether or not this was deliberately done, or is this a string of explosions of accidents, and that's not seeming possible. Let me ask you another question. There's another major thing these 2 clusters that you've been talking about that are headed in our direction. Now NASA has named them Trojan asteroids and are launching a rocket ship in October of 2021 to investigate these. About the same time, they say that these clusters will be near Jupiter. They won't all hit. Matter of fact, they said the clusters are on either side of Jupiter, and a bunch of debris will hit Jupiter, but the 2 clusters will go on by. Do you think they released this information today, just now, 12 hours ago, just before you come on the air? Is this what you're talking about?
Well, they have done that a few times, haven't they, Pastor Paul?
Yes, they have. Yes.
NASA, just if you pay attention to what NASA names objects, right? Any government entity will always name with an intent. It carries a message. As I said before, especially when you're dealing with Russia, you're dealing with the U.S., there are messages that you can send out without ever having to contact the individual. And you do that through media, you do that through newspaper stories, whatever the case. Trojan means unexpected. Trojan means not what you think it is, basically, right? So if they were to do that on purpose, that would be a very dangerous name to use, which would spark a lot of curiosity. But because they named it Trojan, which is not the first time they've ever done this, everybody should pay attention. They've done this before, but the problem was when they give a target date, you better believe something will soon affect us long before that target date. Which also means they likely have eyes on it. Because it wasn't the actual, even in history, it wasn't the Trojan horse that caused the problem. It was what they didn't see that the Trojan horse was affiliated with, speaking of men, and that's what caused the problem. In this same aspect, these two big objects will not cause the problem. The debris around them will cause the problem. And some of that debris is months away from us. It's not going to wait until their target date, late 2021. Some of that debris is coming down. If you watch carefully, you're seeing an uptick in penetrations regarding our atmosphere, and that uptick will continue. I've also seen some upticks in injury-related impacts as far as micrometeorites slamming into the ground. So we're having this uptick in debris coming into the atmosphere of the Earth, and here they are. They published an article, leaking something out, giving us a target date of 2021. But that's not going to be the issue, Pastor Paul. I'll just have to say that, because what they're talking about are two little crumbs from even bigger objects. If it were true and they go to investigate, I don't trust the date. But if they were to go and investigate through optics and through because they're not aerogel might work. But if they get a sample, think about something. If you get a sample of something, wouldn't it be because that's a piece of a bigger object? You don't get a sample of the main object, because a main object you really can't tamper with, right? But that would get information from something bigger that will actually do a little bit of damage, right? Yeah, they always come up with these articles somehow on Wednesdays or Thursdays.
Well, I think they're watching our show, and they know that there's 5,300 people here right now on our YouTube channel, plus the backup and everywhere else. And these shows will get 40, 50,000 views. But they're watching closely because they know that people are getting more and more aware. And they can't hide this. You're the one who said fireballs will hit. There'll be fires breaking out. There'll be particles, charged particles, creating static. Just like this lightning bolt that hit in China this week. It looked like a plasma. Some are calling it a plasma lightning strike. It hit a tall building. I showed it on a video. Can you speak to that as well, Mike?
Well, I'll tell you some of the carvings in rock that are left on the earth that look like kind of like a cone on the top and a cone on the bottom with a ring around it. That is a plasma conduit. That's what they were etching, is consistent plasma strikes that were hitting the earth, sustaining themselves for about 30, 40, 50 seconds. Even last week, I believe it was, they had a sustained strike that it struck in the same spot 119 times in the same spot, sustaining for about 35 seconds. What? Lightning is not supposed to do that, right? So naturally, we have different atmospheric conditions, and our chemistry is changing in the upper atmosphere. So all these, some of these carvings really depict sustained plasma conduits, or which are very dangerous, by the way. They've seen them a few times. They're seeing in the upper atmospheres, they're seeing more and more sprites, and that's from the ISS, of course. It's very difficult for people to see footage that's actually real up there, but they're seeing more and more sprites in the upper atmosphere. And what a sprite is almost like a beam that comes out of a cloud. It is the part you don't see. You see the lightning below, but you don't see what happens up top. So up top, there's a big beam of a reddish, purplish light that will shoot out and sustain itself for a while. That's a sprite. They're seeing too many of those. So many that they're about to have some of these satellites do an additional burn, an unscheduled burn, so they can avoid some of the atmospheric charges that will certainly release from these things. And people are starting to see these sprites. That's one thing they're going to begin to notice. Through breaks in clouds, many people will begin to notice super bright lights. It's not going to be some other sun or anything. It's going to be a sprite, but a very charged sprite. Sometimes they do develop, and they get down to a low altitude, and it would appear in some of these sprites, it looks in the center of the sprite is very dark. Right, so it would look like a person or something would be in the center of it. It's not a person. That's the general makeup of a sprite. So in Rome, when they go crazy over this, when they start saying it in various places, when people start praying again because they see these sprites, they're going to think that it's probably or could be the Virgin Mary in there. That's what they'll think. But you're going to see these more and more. One of the issues is our ground, right, a little bit past the duration of those moments, we're going to see an influx of electrical discharge from the surface of the earth, much like when a volcano erupts. We're going to see that because magma is coming closer and closer to the surface. Magma induces an electromagnetic charge, which will actually begin to attract some of the discharges in the atmosphere making that connection to the ground, in which case we're going to see a lot of things burn, right, for apparently no reason. I think you're talking about factories blowing up and everything else. This, in conjunction with more charged particles coming in, those volatile chemicals that we observed August 17th in 2015, we're going to see many more of those explosions, which is very unfortunate, because that means gasoline. If you have gasoline in a container, plastic container, it could actually part of its chemistry could change, because the nuclei, as charged particles come in, they're going to change the nuclei, some of these substances, causing it to be volatile, and then poof, for no reason. So we're facing some very unstable times, and it's just too bad that more and more people are not aware of these things, Fastball, because this is why I'll say something 5 years before and just leave it alone. The reason why, when they begin to happen, people begin to focus on one element, and they forget about the origin of the problem in the first place, which is it misdirects people into believing something when it's not that, and that does nobody any good. Because we're looking at some very real events, and the ground instabilities are some of the biggest events we'll see in conjunction with combat breaking out all over the place. And this is just, part of that time.
Well, let me ask you a question. So you're saying there's going to be a lot of chaos from different directions. Just this week, the San Andreas fault line, what's called the Apple Fire, which now I think is now burned 61 square miles, right along the San Andreas fault line. Now, there are some scientists out there and observers, Dutch Sense is for one, that really feel that magma is moving and is rising from the core of the earth, is rising up into these cracks like San Andreas fault line, and ignited the wildfires. Is that possible? Is that kind of what you've said in the past was going to happen, not only on land but also under the ocean?
Yeah, it's already happening under the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean. There's a big story developing in the Atlantic Ocean and the Indian Ocean. But magma is going to be responsible for quite a bit. And again, if we can keep our eyes on Mexico, on Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Brazil, even parts of Venezuela, if we have volcanic instabilities in this place, it's going to disturb the Cocos Plate. That Cocos Plate is going to cause a chain reaction in California, and that's not going to be good for the whole of the United States and parts of Canada. So the United States is not as stable as people would think. We're looking at too many upthrusts happening in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Pacific Ocean. Brand new islands are forming all over this world. This, while other land masses are beginning to decrease in altitude, it would seem that's through a warping of the shape of the Earth. So there's so many things going on, but our southern indication, as far as from our position in the United States, Mexico, and Guatemala, El Salvador, Costa Rica, all the way down to Ecuador and Peru, if you start seeing volcanic activity there, those are going to be the beginnings of a great instability. I still am worried about Italy big time, more now than ever. I really am. Just to give an example of that, Madagascar, keep that name in mind, because it will likely draw some attention. And I'm saying that because of some of the reactions based on the shape of the Earth. If you know the shape of the Earth, you can then begin to calculate probabilities of what's going to crack next, right? So Madagascar is one of those places that it's positioned in a place that's an early indicator for problems in Australia, northern Australia. So we're going to have an event in Madagascar, and that's right, probably near the Mozambique Canal channel, up in that way. So we'll probably have an incident there, some sort of geological activity, whether that be one of those rare earthquakes or some volcanic activity near Madagascar. Could be in one of the offset islands in the Comoros, is that it? Yeah. So we have to watch. We have to watch that, because when that happens, they're going to send out warning bells again near Italy and probably South America and China.
So when you say Italy, and you said Another prediction you made when you said, keep an eye on Mount Stromboli, guys. That thing's going to blow. There was no seismic activity. They didn't even have a watch going on. You know how they usually set up shop and they got a few scientists there, seismologists and people. This thing blew 10 days after you said that. Is it because you have access to the magma moving? Can you see what's going on? And is there magma moving under the Vatican? I mean, is there something going on there in Rome?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't 2 years ago on one of the runways. They had an issue with steam coming up through the runway, which was caused by magma. They have done some constructive things there to keep water flowing in certain areas to make any magma that would ever come up to start to crush real fast. The problem is where Monaco, Spain, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, of course Italy, down into the part of the island sets in Malta. That's one big, huge magma vault. That's the size of Libya. Okay, so you're looking at a big magma chamber the size of Libya that's highly active and obviously is building in pressure. As it builds in pressure, it has to have relief points. We haven't had enough volcanic eruptions to relieve the massive amount of pressure building up in the earth. Unless we have just some insane volcanic eruptions, we're not going to have an equalization in pressure. And one of these tender spots is going to blow, and Italy sits right over top of one of them. In all truth, this is a probability above 80%. We could wake up one day, and the whole province of Italy could be on fire. The entire thing could be on fire. The entire thing.
Wait. Are you serious?
Yeah, because I'll say it again. There's a chamber about the size of Libya sitting right underneath Italy, right underneath that place. And I know they tell people it's dormant, it's remnants. Let them say what they want to say, but this thing is building up pressure. And there are telltale signs in the Mediterranean Sea of some of these pressures. They're doing consistent monitoring of the Mediterranean. Right now they have to. They've been doing this for years, and they're tracking a few things out there, but that's a very volatile space with a very thin crust. And if that magma continues to build, for example, I believe it was last week or the week before, I said, don't be surprised if we have solar activity and we're supposed to be in the middle of a minimum. Well, what do you see? That's because we had two pulses come in, right? And I was talking about that last week, I do believe, about two pulses coming in. So we could have some off-schedule solar activity. Well, the same way these pulses affect the sun affects the earth, and these pulses affect the earth. We just can't see it yet, but we're about to begin to realize that there's an intimate relationship between the sun, the core of the earth, and these galactic cosmic rays that keep breaching our heliosphere. So that's a very volatile spot. Very volatile spot. It is somewhat disheartening because you know that you can't warn people of that. That's something you can't warn people of. That's something that you're not going to have a clock for. That's something that if you're not spiritually aware of this, if you have no confirmation internally in the spirit, there's no way you can prove this, because civilians are not going to have capability to prove that, first of all. And that just takes an awareness of spirit to really realize, what time it is on God's clock.
So, Mike, we're in the world with us tonight. Mike, you just brought up the sun, and Heidi was hosting the show, I think, on Tuesday. And the question is cycle 25 beginning? We've only been in this solar minimum 3 years, and usually they're 11-year cycles. Is Planet X, Nibiru, planet number 9, or let's call it a binary system, is it causing major, massive disruptions to the sun, and can it reignite a solar maximum, move away from the minimum?
Well, I believe it is caused by a twin of sorts, but the interactions from observations, this is from observations, when a smaller star in a twin system gets in close proximity. Close proximity is so far in distance you can't see the other star. But when they get in close proximity, the larger sun, right, does not have the gravitational pull of that smaller object. The smaller object starts to take the forces of the larger object and pull it directly into itself. It recharges, so to speak. It will take the materials from the larger sun, right? And all that material will be redirected to that smaller object. That's through observations where you have this yin-yang symbol in galaxies when you see, or in solar systems, when you see that you have a binary or more system. So imagine that happening to us. That means our solar winds, which hit Earth now, will begin to bend. So that means you're going to hit a different part of Earth. Now, a change in solar winds will also affect something that we don't want affected. And here we go. All these solar flares that come out of the sun, all the solar winds, they keep the heliosphere established. Is what they do. They push everything out, right? If those solar winds begin to bend, we're going to have a breach, right, in our heliosphere, which means concentrations of galactic cosmic rays are going to come in such concentration that it's going to cause every single planet in our solar system to have a problem during certain aspects of their rotation around the sun. In the meanwhile, more and more light from the sun will be redirected to this smaller object, which means the light of the sun will begin to change into this golden color. And we will entertain days where everything looks like it's golden. It won't be because, the sun is hardening or anything. It's going to be because the photons in the sun are being redirected. It will continue to do this until there's no light at all. You'll hit this 0 point where all the photons from the sun will be redirected to the smaller star. Right, so no light will hit the Earth from the sun, but we will have a bigger problem when those photons are redirected. Infrared heat goes up at least 50 times when it shoots out from the sun, hitting any surface around it. So it begins to fry the planets around it because photons also act as in part a shield for infrared wavelengths, right? They kind of disrupt them so the heat is not so intense. But if they're redirected, you're getting pure infrared. You have a problem, right? And we'll likely face that. So that means a frying of portions of this Earth. Okay, that means everything on the surface, you're going to have vitrification. In deserts, that means the sand turns to glass. Temperatures of about, you're looking at 2,000, 5,000 degree temperatures, sporadic, but still hitting. That means if you're in the sun, you're not going to make it. And that will be just a bad day. This could last. It's been observed to last in other systems for months, not for days, for months.
Okay, so you're saying sporadic, high heat rays, almost like laser rays, 2,000 degrees, and they're sporadically hitting in different parts of the Earth. Let me ask you a question, Mike. In Joel chapter 2, one of the prophecies of the last days says this: the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord come. So is this what you're saying, that at some point this binary system, as it's going by, can suck the protons or the photons or the electrons, or what would I just suck all that out of there? The helium, it takes the helium too, right? Could turn the sun dark for a little bit?
Right. Most of the emissions of the sun will be redirected, which means if the photons are redirected by this other force, then we won't see light coming. It'll appear that the sun is not lit up. And as a consequence of that, due to a photon redirection, in any case, especially when they're doing experiments at MIT and other universities, in every single case, any object that's in front of that star will appear to be red. Our moon gives off a whitish type light, right? A reflection from the sun to the Earth back to our eyes. Well, if you're looking at infrared, coming off the sun and nothing else, and infrared will also begin to dither, or it will disperse, causing the moon to appear like it's totally red. And then that's what you're going to see the entire time. These photons are redirected. Now, that is that is bound to a simulation. Will it happen in real life? I'm not sure.
Well,
sure,
let's ask the question. With the sun goes dark, how long will it be dark? And is there still heat radiating off of it to keep the earth warm?
More heat than we're getting right now. Again, the photons, right? The balance of photons, infrared, UV, and all these things coming away from the sun are in good balance in proportion to our atmospheres. Our atmospheres are filters that filter out all these different wavelengths, right? But if the photons are redirected, if that happens, if the solar winds bend, we're going to have an issue with our atmosphere. If we have an issue with our atmosphere, then more radiation from the sun is going to penetrate to the surface of the earth. So it will appear to be dark, but extremely hot. You're looking at no protection. For example, in the northern pole, there was an issue in 2005 or 6, where part of the atmosphere was just kind of gone. At that moment, it was like a microwave oven was on, and anybody who stepped in a specific zone, it only took 3 seconds to bubble your skin. What? So just think of it that way. So if all these wavelengths are getting down through the atmosphere, microwaves are amongst them too. Nobody can stand on the surface. That would be like you know, going inside of a microwave, and we all know the causes of that. That will heat up water molecules with a snap of a finger. So that, you know, those type phenomenons is what we'll likely see during the passage of this thing. And again, we may not ever see the other companion in this binary system, but we will see some of the other orbiting objects around this secondary binary system.
5,500 people watching tonight on our main channel. Mike, another prophecy in the same chapter. This is Joel 3. In Joel 3, he says this will happen in the day of the Lord. In verse 15, the sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining. The Lord also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake, but the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. Now, this has not happened yet. So could these photons being pulled out of the sun, temporarily darkening the sun, but you say the sun's still going to give off even more heat, and it's going to darken the moon. The moon's going to turn to red, but it will be darker because it's not getting the reflection that it was getting from the sun. Is that right?
Correct. The same reflection from the photons that are hitting the Earth now will not reflect back onto the moon, causing it to appear like a bluish white. It'll be a reddish color. Now, we have two scenarios here, too, because we are facing a big dust cloud coming our way, which has a lot of oxides in it, iron oxides also, which can, if they're in the atmosphere, right, because we're going to entertain a time where the smoke in the atmosphere is going to be so thick, we're not going to be able to see the sky for a long time, right? Because we are going to have entertained the time where many different volcanoes are going off and we're dealing with ash. That day is coming quicker than what we think. But with that in mind, that could be one of the reasons why we couldn't see this. Because if the stars withdraw their shining, you can't see the sun or the moon, then obviously there's a veil over us somehow, and we can't see anything. But we will. One of the there's some weapons that were introduced in 2020, Pastor Paul, and one of them is so incredibly, I call it sneaky destructive, that it can, much like a microwave, can ignite chemicals that are far away from it, you know, so long as that beam is aimed at it. These things send out a radio burst, which can cause just about most chemical substances to become volatile, right? Now, it just so happens that most of the chemicals that we have, they let off black smoke if they continue to burn. Plus, we have a lot of oil and rubber. What would happen if one of these weapons went off? They already know it would ignite oil wells all around it from the ground. And you know, I was in Iraq when Saddam, with his wisdom, lit all those oil wells on fire, and that's not very fun. But you know, when I was over there and it was raining in my face, oil, you could look up and it was just red everywhere. It was the strangest thing, because the sun looked like the sun was going in and out the clouds but it looked red everywhere. It just looked red. We have so many oil wells in the earth right now. We have so many taps in the earth right now that if some of these weapons were used or the heat got high enough on the surface, it could ignite some of these oil wells, right? And if that were to happen, you're looking at black smoke filling the atmosphere very, very quickly. I've entertained volcanoes doing this, and there are a couple of volcanoes that do billow out black ash and black smoke. They do.
Yeah.
And there's some that are normal ash, but there's some that are pure black.
Yes.
But with all these, if you put a dot at every single oil production facility on the earth, right? If some of these began to ignite, we're having a problem. And in the Bible, I just can't see how that won't happen. And here's why: if all the green grass of the earth is burnt up, right? Yeah. We have a problem. Yes. We have a big problem. If all the green grass is burnt up, we have a problem. There's no way the check valves can withstand that type of heat. You're going to have part failures in the check valves, which means that oil is just going to start spewing out on fire, going all over the place. We're going to have sort of a black blanket over the earth. That could happen with the oil, is what I'm saying. So the potential is there. What it's actually going to come from, we don't know. But I know that we have enough oil taps that if 1/4 of those oil taps did that, we're gonna blot out our own sky, and that would be an unfortunate day, because that smoke hovers at a very low altitude, and it's not fun to breathe in either.
And now, Mike, how long? Because all of this will be happening because the sun is darkened and the heat is being released. The moon is turned to blood. The stars are being hidden by the veil of dust. The asteroids are falling and crashing into the earth. The grass is burning. Let's say the oil wells are bursting in flames. Chaos, and there's plagues, and there's diseases, and there's COVID-19 and COVID-21 and COVID-25 and new viruses we don't even know about, and ticks that are infecting people. So it's really going to be hell on earth. I mean, you're talking about mankind in a state of absolute apocalyptic. How long will the sun stay that way? Is this it? Does it just stay? Is this the great day of the Lord, or is it like a few hours and then it comes back on? What's the story?
No, well, through observations, if they see it one day, they observe it, and another year passes, they see that the planet is there are a couple of systems where it lasted at least 8 to 10 months. There's another system where it lasted, I believe the shortest I've seen was 4 months. So we could be looking at 4 months of darkness, of a dark world, of a world that
can humanity survive that?
Not many of them could. No, they couldn't. But you know what, Pastor Paul? Here's the issue. We're talking about that major event, right? One of those major events. Right. I have this. I can't shake it. I think that events on this earth, before that happens, I think we're gonna be a bit vulnerable long before that takes place. And here's why I say that: man's mind, his attitude, right, is only going to become worse as our magnetosphere continues to sporadically fail in certain places. It's altering, it's changing, and that's going to affect people's minds. You remember 2 years ago, when I was talking about the mental state of mankind would begin to degrade to the point where you wouldn't be able to communicate simple things to humanity. In other words, they wouldn't be able to understand simple concepts anymore. And they would be largely violent, not listening to one another. That's just like this COVID-19. They keep coming back with these medical reports. And what I'm reading outside of public media and everything else is there are neurological things that are happening in the body, and the cognitive abilities of individuals who have been affected with COVID-19 are degrading. But even without COVID-19, the same thing is happening to others. They're degrading, but they can't understand complex aspects of forgiveness, things of that nature. And what we see in the world right now, though, the average individual, Pastor Paul, is violent. They're frustrated. They're ready to fight one another at the drop of a dime. And this is all over the earth, because most of the people are rebelling against their governments right now, and no one's immune from this. It is the strangest thing you'll ever see. But at the same time, our magnetosphere is not as stable as it could be, right? And also, I would just say that faith is almost all but gone. It exists among us, right? But if you happen to walk the world, you wouldn't want to be there for too long. Right now, we're safe. We're safe within the confines of fellow believers. You get outside of fellow believers, and I'm telling you, it's like stepping into a ring of hyenas. It's pretty bad. And you can't even speak to the people regarding simple concepts like forgiveness. That's just like some of these people that are marching. You have some that are marching for a call so we can have peace. But then you say, okay, what kind of peace are you going to establish here? Well, they don't know. And what I'm saying is something is driving people and they don't know what's driving them. And then some of the police officers, right? Because I have those in my family along with military people. But I have some relatives who are upset and angry. And you say, well, can't you calm down? Well, no, I can't. This is on my mind 24/7. So we're looking at something that we're no longer facing one side against the other, one side's right above the other. We're facing hatred. Look at the face of the individuals on media. Just take your time and check it out and see how much hatred, see how much deceit, see how much bitterness that you see in their faces of everybody that you see on television. I've never seen anything like it, and I'm a pretty good judge of individuals. I used to get paid for that, to get the pulse of my enemies. And I'm telling you now, in America, you can look at the average individual and they're out for blood. And they're not going to be satisfied until somebody pays the price, but they don't know what price they're going to pay, and they don't care. So
it's like they've become mindless. It's like they've become soulless. Almost like they don't have a soul now. They become almost psychotic, and so they're marching. You talk about the blind leaders of the blind. Now, this is really where people are all going to fall in the ditch together. They become atheistic. They don't want God. They've become anti-government, anti-authority, and they hate their neighbors. And you're right. I've never seen this before, but politicians, Washington, hate one another, both sides. The news media hate the people they cover and the information they deliver. And they have no cure for it. There's never a remedy. There's never an answer. Jesus said, the peace I give you is not what the world gives you, for the peace I'll give you passes all understanding. They're really in a mess. And let's ask about Portland right now. What is going on there, Mike? What is going on in Portland? What are they fighting about now? Do they even know?
Do you know that in Portland they have an internal fight with the people, right? That want this change. They're fighting amongst each other, and the officials now are fighting amongst each other. And some of the people who were trying to speak sense into them, right, to kick out of Portland, they don't want these guys. And what they want is something that will never take place, Pastor Paul. I'm going to tell you what they're blatantly calling for. There's a commercial out on television. There's some advertisements too. Now listen to what I'm saying. Here's this commercial. This commercial says, forget about all those things that divide. Let us unite under the banner of science. They are saying that. Let science give us our truth that we can be unified, right? So in other words, what they're doing is, if with a spiritual eye, you can see that what they're doing is cultivating. There's the Spirit cultivating all these people. There's no way in the world that the entire globe is going to go through this issue in Portland all at the same time. This is a coordinated spiritual effort, and it is supernatural, and it's breaking down. I've got good friends, right, that they have lost it, right? But I'm quick to tell anybody, right, I'm going to choose Christ first over everything in my life.
Right.
I don't care what the cost is, what I lose or anything else. I'm going to choose Christ. But these folks, these people are losing it day by day. And number one, you're finding out, and I believe this. Here's what I believe. I believe that what's inside of all of us, right, is finally being shown on the outside. The world right now is conducive to what? Iniquities. The world is iniquitous, so it doesn't matter, right, for these folks, if they have iniquity in them. Now they're starting to display that iniquity all over the place. and there's no punishment for it. There's no punishment for this iniquitous world anymore. So they continue to become what they really are, and it's shocking to a lot of people. Unfortunately, I believe that in that scripture where it says speaking about the bees, he's going to wear out the saints of the Most High. I strongly believe that's been underway for a long time, because we do not have a Christ centered kingdom established yet. And until we have a Christ established kingdom here, of course it's going to wear us out. It's not going to kill us, but it's going to wear us out. We may be beat down a little bit, like the Apostle Paul said he would be, but we're not dead. We're still going. And I believe all of this is purpose, by the way, but it's also a wake-up call to us, because I believe it's going to cause us to be a bit more cling to those spiritual things, so we won't be lost in what the world is lost in right now. And it's really going to get a lot worse for the disturbance in our magnetosphere. That probably will begin in about 4 days. Some more hiccups.
What about CERN? Is it are they running that thing? What are they doing down there? And
they're working on this, that cloud experiment I was telling you about, because they need to know precise dates, precise times of how these galactic cosmic rays are going to affect the atmosphere. They are working at a breakneck pace in coordination with Star City, with other facilities around the globe. They're trying to find multiple things, but one of the things they're looking for is safety. Now, as I'll say it one more time, one of the greatest inventions that ever came out of CERN are their magnets. Their magnets are so powerful that they can create an artificial magnetic field just like the Earth over any city they want to. You know what that means? That means if we lose our magnetic field, they can actually protect the city through CERN. Do you know that? They have the technology to protect the city by the magnets they developed. A lot of money went into those magnets, right? These are not normal these are not normal magnets. These magnets are, they're perfect. They can replicate the Earth's magnetic field perfectly. Right? So they can put that shielding. The Earth's magnetic field is a shield. That's the only reason we're not burned up. And they can produce that shield over large areas. They also have the ability to redirect, particles from that facility. They already know that capability is there. I would say that by the end of this year, certainly on the Abrams platform, you're going to see more particle beam weapons than what you see right now, because they perfected it. CERN is essentially a controlled nuclear explosion. It's also a controlled turret that can shoot particles, and then capture those particles, which is unheard of. So if they didn't have the collector and they shot these particles in a straight line, they would traverse the globe, killing everything in its path, certainly burning up everything in its path, and that's just from CERN. So CERN, if CERN can be straightened out, it's an available weapon already. The magnetic power that CERN produces can produce an electromagnetic field that can protect something the size of I say right now, the United States, Brazil. It could protect Iran, something the size of Iran, Saudi Arabia, big chunks of land like that. So, and that means they wouldn't be exposed to radiation. If that were to ever hit, they could protect the Earth's surface from radiation with those magnets. And that was one of the first things they had perfected, because without those magnets, you have no containment of the particles, right? You remember
So do you think they are trying to figure out a way to protect part of the Earth from wormwood? From a deep impact asteroid that apparently makes all the water, or a lot of the water, bitter, and many men die. Do you think they're trying to preserve an area on Earth for the human species? In their mind, I'm saying it's not the Bible, but in their mind, they're nervous.
There are places for that. I'll say it again, Pastor Paul, they believe in prophecy.
Yeah.
The Christians are the ones who have an issue believing in prophecy.
That's insane. That's insane.
They spend trillions of dollars because they know prophecy will come to pass. They have looked at every piece of archaeology that they have paid people to go. They're paying the people to do archaeology, right? They control the Archaeological Congress. They control all the research money, and they're paying people to get the answers for them, and they're prepared preparing for the thing, right? And we debate about the thing. We're still in training wheels, trying to find out who's right about what. Well, I have some advice. All of us are wrong, and the Father's right, and it's all coming whether we're ready or not. And we've had a lifetime to prepare, right? But they absolutely believe, because they are involved in high-level spiritual things. And although it may be evil, right, they still believe in the Messiah. They know the Messiah was here. They know that for a fact. They don't have to guess or sit up to call somebody crazy. They know it for a fact, and they have already prepared. They're going to leave. They're going to go into their little caves and mountains, which are their tombs. Well, it's not going to save them, really, because by that time, most things will not be material. Most things will be spiritual at that time. But right now we're in a time of transition.
Yes.
And it's almost like forces are trying to get us to not pay attention to prophetic things. Things are trying to get us to look back at some, I don't know, happy days or something like that, when in fact we're right at the door to massive changes, and they're happening all around us, and this certainly is not the time for any type of denial.
The day of the Lord is near, folks, and the Bible says, Mike, that the devil believes and he trembles. So it doesn't shock me that he is working overtime, that he is on the offensive now to try to conquer the earth, to at least save the elitist, to create a way to survive the incoming asteroid clusters, to survive the sun going dark, to survive massive eruptions of volcanoes. It's so much so that they're debating on how to do it. Should we go underground? Should we stay and protect a ghost city? Should we go to Mars? I mean, they're absolute. They know it's coming. The church is asleep because we're living in some la-la land, arguing with each other over baptism or pre-trib or post-trib, or we're fighting over denominational stuff and doctrines of things that don't make any difference, and we're falling out with each other while the whole world's going to hell in a handbasket. The church should be leading the pace on prophecy and sharing with the world that the coming King is coming. But that's why the Bible says they could even deceive the very elect if it were possible. But it's not possible if you understand the Word of God, if you study the Word of God, and you stay focused on the end times and what Jesus is going to do. He's going to make it better. He's going to make it real better. But we're in a transition. And Mike, you've nailed it. Let me ask you, Mike, one more question. You'll be back with us next Thursday. What should we look for? You always do this at the end of the show. What kind of bomb are you going to drop on me now?
Well, I think personally, I know some decisions will be made by then, and we'll probably be talking policy next Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, because they're already doing checkpoints in New York if you're entering in. Are you talking about stuff like that?
Well, yeah, it's going to be a few policies that come down that will be quite controversial. We'll be discussing policy.
All right, Mike. We'll see you next week, next Thursday. Lord willing, unless we're raptured out of here.
All right, Pastor Paul. God bless you, brother.
Thank you so much, brother, for being with us. We love you and we appreciate it.